Hi guys, and welcome to a video about how we are going to adjust and adapt our decks towards the current metagame. In this video I'm gonna showcase a little bit about how I'm doing it, and we're actually gonna upgrade and tweak one of my Sisay decks. I usually don't do videos like these. I don't really do videos about the updates that I've made for my decks. I usually just do them online, and then you can see the updates on my deck lists, on Mox Fields, etc. But the main purpose and idea of this video is to showcase the thought process of rinse and repeat and how to tweak your deck according to the metagame. And also from this video you could take away something of a deck tech video for Law of Sisay. And that's just an unavoidable bonus when we're doing an example. The first thing we're going to do is make a copy of this LOL League of Legends Sisay. Then we're going to change the name into Law of Sisay, which is something of the new deck. But what actually is the current metagame? Well, I actually made a video about that a long time ago. In short, Fastest Oracle, Ad Nauseam and Underworld Breach are some of the mainstream combos you often run into. I also often run into Thrasius with Bruce, usually trying to win with Dockside Extortionist and Emil. And sometimes I also have to combat Ukima Food Chain. I think that kinda summarizes it. Also, sometimes I run into more obscure, uncommon commanders like Elsha of the Infinite. However, what's going to affect Ad Nauseam is also going to affect Elsha of the Infinite. Both are casting a lot of non-creature spells and are trying to play like a storm deck. So in the end, I'm going to build my meta rogue stax deck with intent of going up against these strategies. I don't think that I need to separate these three. Whatever is going to affect Underworld Breach is also going to affect Ad Nauseam and Peer into the Abyss. Okay, that's not entirely true, but in short, it's true. And this is where the so-called rinse and repeat kicks in. And I've been playtesting with a card that goes by the name of Deafening Silence. 1 white mana enchantment only. Each player can't cast more than 1 non-creature spell each turn. And in experience, this card alone have kind of completely shut down both turbo strategies with Underworld Breach and Ad Nauseam. Going forward, this has actually never happened to me yet, but one day it will. Tundra, Mana Crypt and a turn 1 Archon of Emeria. If I'm the starting player and I put this pesky bird person into play turn 1, I just think I win the game instantly versus the decks that I'm going up against, because all of their non-basic lands, which are basically every land inside their entire deck, are gonna come into play tapped. That's extra horrible versus fetch lands, and they can't cast more than 1 spell each turn. I'm going to get so much ahead compared to everyone else with this. And guys, that's the big thing with Sisay. Sisay doesn't really actually cast spells. She usually just draw a card, put a land into play, and pass turn, and interact with her ability in instant speed. Sure, we might put a mana dork into play, or an extra stax piece, but in general we just pass turn. When we are winning the game, we don't usually cast spells either. So if you're trying to win the game and someone is trying to interact, you could still cast a counterspell to protect your win during your turn while there is a rule of law effect in play. So if my analysis is correct, rule of law effects are gonna slow down the game for my opponents, making the game go longer, where I can accumulate more value and take over the game in a little bit later stage, while my deck are pretty much unaffected by the stax effect of rule of law, therefore breaking parity and getting ahead of everyone else. That's the game plan of how I'm going to update my list and fight in the current metagame. You always, when you're playing something of a stax deck, want to find stax cards that are affecting all of your opponents, while you yourself don't really care. Another thing I find quite funny about these rule of law effects Archon of Emeria is that they are actually quite good versus Chrom. Chrom are good in an aggressive game where people are rushing with tempo, trying to ritual out really big effects, because then Chrom can accumulate value from opponents that are trying to cast a little bit more than too many spells per turn. However, rule of law effects are just shutting that capacity down completely and negating the entire draw effect from Chrom. So I want to add this Eidolon of Rhetoric to my deck. It's a perfect 3 mana cost Rule of Law, a creature 1/4 that's great with Derevi, we're gonna get to that later, but I think we can nail some of these Rule of Law 3 mana cost cards into play quite consistently turn 2. We have a really high amount of mana dorks in this deck, so turn 1 Land or Elf, turn 2 Eidolon of Rhetoric, or another one of these 3 mana cost stax cards that really stranglehold on the game and slow down the game pace. This is gonna sound absolutely crazy, but currently a turn 2 Rule of Law might actually be too slow. We might have to try and make sure that our deck is capable of smashing one of these effects into play as fast as turn 1. But in this update, I'm gonna try to aim them for turn 2. If I feel the necessity of getting it into play at turn 1, then there are some tweaks we can do. But now, what are we actually going to cut for our Eidolon of Rhetoric? Here is Sug River Cutthroat. I'm going to cut this Merfolk Fish. Let me explain. This is a great grindy card when our Sisay is usually getting counterspelled. And it's a great card versus matchups where your opponents are really grindy as well. However, I don't feel that I have opponents that have a better late game than me. My late game is pretty amazing already, and I don't think I need more value cards. This is important. If you wanna be the so-called the late game deck, the deck that can go long and grind really hard, then you don't need to overkill it. If you're only going up against turbo combo players that are trying to win fast, you are probably the late game deck. Even though your deck might be really bad at grinding, let's say for example that your deck is weaker at the late game stage compared to Tymna and Thrasius, but you're never playing against Tymna and Thrasius, you're playing against other decks that aren't equally good at grinding, then you don't need to overkill it and add in extra grindy value cards. So Sig you go, and Eidolon of Rhetoric, here we go. The green bow have been an amazing combo piece, and it's a great card to rebuild our game plan and also kill some Aven Mind Sensors. However, I'm not really going up against that many Aven Mind Sensors anymore, so I think the bow is gonna go. You're not gonna believe this. Normally I win the game with Bow of Nayela, but we're gonna win the game with Mayhem Devil. Alright, let me actually explain Mayhem Devil. I wanna have a really high creature count, we're gonna get to that later. Mayhem Devil is a really good hate bear in the current metagame. You see, there's a lot of Dockside Extortionists and fetch lands that are running around, and the Mayhem Devil can really interact and pretty much shut those combos down, because when they are cracking their treasures and fetch lands, you're gonna get bolts on creatures, so you can basically sit there and remove your opponent's creatures a little bit however you want. Also, you really want to have the Rakdos colors in play, because that's gonna turn your Bloom Tender and Feyburrow Elder, if I can find it, there it is, into one card combos. I'm not gonna explain exactly how that functions, but trust me, you wanna have the Rakdos combos to turn your Bloom Tender and Feyburrow Elder into one card combos. So let me explain how Mayhem Devil is the finisher for the deck. With Infinite Mana and Sisay, we can find Kinnan. Then with Infinite Mana, we can activate Kinnan infinitely, finding Mayhem Devil and Dockside Extortionist, and if it already wasn't in play, Emil. And then we flicker Dockside infinitely, generating infinite treasures, we sacrifice these and deal infinite damage, and we win. Alright, so I currently want to add Rule of Law to my deck. Now, Legacy Allure is an option that I could cut, because I want to decrease the amount of grind value that I have inside this deck. However, Legacy Allure have proven to be a really good card to comboing off and winning faster, because with this spell you can usually get it up to a 1 or 2 treasures, and with that you can steal a Thrasius, and with a Thrasius, Sisay turns into a 4/4, and that's gonna speed up her power to find more expensive legendaries. Instead, I'm actually going to cut Steel Enchantment. It have proven to be quite good. I've usually stolen Smothering Tides and Carpet of Flowers, but I don't feel the need of Steel Enchantment anymore. I don't think that I need to grind value that much more. I think Rule of Law is gonna be better. Am I actually overdoing it? Am I putting too many rule of law effects inside this deck? I don't think so. Let's actually talk a little bit about Cyclonic Rift. Now, you might still be going up against Cyclonic Rift. Cyclonic Rift is the anti-stax card. If you're a fast combo deck and there's a bunch of stax pieces in play that's delaying you, you can usually solve one of these with an Abrupt Decay. But then there are more stax pieces, so you're gonna find Assassin's Trophy, and then there might be more stax pieces, so you have to find the Red Elemental Blast, and then you have to find more and more spot removals to remove all of these pesky stax pieces. But there's one thing that is just solving all of your problems, and that is an overloaded Cyclonic Rift. You usually just sit there and say, I can't win the game, putting more mana into play, accumulating the mana that you need to overload the Cyclonic Rift in the last opponent's end step, removing all stax pieces, taking your turn, and then winning the game when the field is free. A Fire Covenant is also a really good example of a card that is doing the exact same thing like Cyclonic Rift. But now you can see something really crazy. At my instant selection, I don't actually play Cyclonic Rift, and the reason is really simple. I don't really play that much more against stax decks. I'm playing against Storm decks, some Food Chain decks, and some other really fast combo decks. And there are better spot removals than Cyclonic Rift. Cyclonic Rift is that stax board wipe removal. Now, I'm not saying that you should cut Cyclonic Rift. If you're playing against these stax decks like this deck, you should probably play Cyclonic Rift. Cyclonic Rift is a great card versus this specific deck. But I don't really go up against opponents that have Cyclonic Rifts inside their deck, because they are usually not playing against other stax decks either. Stax has sadly fallen a bit off, and that's where you can exploit it, because now you can suddenly overflow with rule of law effects. If I have, for example, the card Rule of Law in play, a Deafening Silence, or Eidolon of the Rhetoric in play, the only card that is kind of seeing play today in the current metagame is Force of Vigor that is taking care of both of these things. So I believe a strategy currently, it's probably gonna change. I mean, if I play this deck a little bit too much, people are gonna put Cyclonic Rift in their deck and I have to change this deck again. But in this little time period, smashing too many stax pieces into play is gonna make it impossible for your opponents to spot remove them individually one by one with Abrupt Decays. We are also going to put this card inside, not the main board. We're going to move you to the sideboard. Let me explain. So this is actually a card I want to play but shouldn't play. This is probably a card I'm going to play test a bunch, because it's currently affecting a lot of different cards in the current cEDH combo format, including our own Dockside Extortionist combo, which is one of our main one-card combos for this deck, and for that reason it's something you should think a little bit extra about. In the end, playtesting is going to reveal if it's actually worth it or not. I don't think I need Oath of Liliana anymore, but Oath of Chandra have proven to be consistently useful. I want to add Sphere of Resistance to this deck. Why did it actually choose Sphere of Resistance? There are 3 different candidates here actually. Twin Sphere is a card I've seen a lot of other Sisay players play with great result, being recommended to me, and I agreed. Twin Sphere is a great card for Sisay. Fawn of Amnesty is also a great card. Sisay doesn't care about these 3 stax effects at all, because Sisay aren't in general casting spells. Now, we should probably play Fawn of Amnesty instead of Sphere of Resistance, because we are actually casting creature spells and our opponents aren't usually casting creature spells, so the Fawn should in general be better. But I'm going for the Sphere of Resistance instead because of Food Chain. You see, the Food Chain combo doesn't actually care one bit about Twin Sphere or the Fawn, but Sphere of Resistance is shutting down the Food Chain combo completely. And Food Chain was one of the 4 Horsemen combos that I'm actually trying to interact with here. I actually think that's it for now. I think I'm gonna keep Gaia Reach Sanitarium. I might cut that in the future because I don't think I actually need it. Gaia Reach Sanitarium usually was my win con together with the bow, but now I have Mayhem Devil instead. I have a bunch of Rule of Law effects. I have 1, 2, 3, I have 4. That should be somewhat enough. I have Zero Resistance, I have the Invala Suris Renegade. We're gonna add Arcane Laboratory to the sideboard. That's a card we could have in this deck in the future. We're also adding Lotus Petal to the sideboard, adding Simian Spirit Guide and the Elvish Spirit Guide, both the green and the red version to my sideboard together with Lotus Petal. The reason is, if I ever wanna make this into a turn 1 Rule of Law deck, then I'm probably gonna include these cards. If I feel that I need to be adapted and capable of fighting really fast versus these turbo combo decks, then I think these cards are necessary. Remember, I'm still probably going to be the late game deck, being able to grind really long games, even though I have these really fast mana inside my deck. Alright, we are actually done. Go public, save settings. This is probably gonna be the Sisay version you're gonna see me playing for a while. I hope this was worth your while and that you found something entertaining and educational here. Alright, peace! Toss a coin to your Twitcher. Oh, please share the video. Oh, please share the video. Toss a coin to your Twitcher, a friend of communities. Thank you, Patreons. The champion will prevail. Now pour him some mail. Toss a coin to your Twitcher. Oh, please share the video. Oh, please share the video. Toss a coin to your Twitcher, a friend of community.